parents would read to me was Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. Do you know this book? This was written in like the 70s, so some of you weren't really even an idea yet when this book was written. So if you're not familiar, it's a kid's book where a young boy, Alexander, just about every bad and inconvenient thing that could happen to him in a single day happens to him. Here's the first page. It just jumps right in. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard, and by mistake, I dropped my sweater in the sink while the water is running, and I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. There's like 30 things that happen to Alexander. They're all bad in this book, and he has this refrain or sort of this running gag throughout the book where he says, I should just go to Australia. He's always saying, maybe it's better in Australia. So here's how the book ends. When I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow he said I could keep, and the Mickey Mouse nightlight burned out, and I bit my tongue. The cat wants to sleep with Anthony, not with me. It's been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. My mom says days are like that, even in Australia. Now, as an adult, what I can appreciate about the book is the ending where you realize, yes, sometimes life is just like that. And the book, there's no happy ending. They don't wrap that up. They don't put a bow on it. There's no presents under the tree. It's just, that was a bad day. Deal with it, kid. I want you to picture in your own mind, when's the last time you had a day like that? A day where just things did not go well. Where you're just in a funk, and nothing goes your way, and your mind is just elsewhere, and you go to bed and you think, man, I could really use a do-over. That day was just rotten. I think Jesus, in his ministry, had days like that. I think he had ups and downs, just like anybody would, and an occasional horrible, terrible, no good, very bad day. And that's the impression I get when I read our lesson for today that comes out of John chapter 6, starting in verse 60. It says, on hearing it, and we're going to talk about what it is in a little bit. On hearing it, many of his disciples said, this is a hard teaching. Who can accept it? Aware that his disciples were grumbling about this, Jesus said to them, does this offend you? Then what if you see the Son of Man ascend to where he was before? The Spirit gives life. The flesh counts for nothing. The words I have spoken to you, they are full of spirit and life. Yet there are some of you who do not believe, for Jesus had known from the beginning which of them did not believe and who would betray him. He went on to say, this is why I told you that no one can come to me unless the Father has enabled them. From this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. You do not want to leave too, do you? Jesus asked the 12. So that's our question for the day. Do you not want to leave too? I can just hear the sadness in Jesus' voice. To me, he sounds just completely demoralized. And we don't really think of Jesus in this way, or at least we're not accustomed to thinking about Jesus in this way. So it would be useful when we read the scriptures to be reminded that Jesus, he felt every emotion that you've ever felt, because he was a guy. He was a guy, just a human. He was a guy, or like a girl. Like he was us. So if you've ever had just an amazing day where you got that job promotion you were hoping for, or you made the varsity cheerleading squad, or Crumble Cookie got that flavor, it's like your best flavor, and that's just like the best feeling in the world, and you're pumped. Jesus had days like that too. He had days where he was just excited. Maybe you can remember what it was like when your first child was born. Jesus had days like that too. Maybe you woke up with gum in your hair and you tripped on your skateboard. Jesus had days like that too. So what happened to cause Jesus to have this terrible day? What happened that so many people turned away from Jesus? What did he say? What did he do? What has got him asking the question of his closest friends, are you going to leave me too? So you may remember the miracle of the loaves and fishes. We just taught on this a few weeks ago. It's a story that's recorded in all 4 of the Gospels. And the story goes that there's a crowd of people, and they're following Jesus, and they're getting hungry, and Jesus takes a child's lunch, which was 2 loaves of fish and 5 loaves of bread. Did I say loaf of fish? Man, if that's the worst thing that happens to me today, I'll be all right. It actually says that. Oh, loaves and fish. I see. Okay. He takes a couple of fish and a couple of loaves of bread, and he gives thanks for it. He breaks it, and he begins to pass it around. And somehow there's enough to feed thousands of people and to fill baskets with leftovers. And the crowd begins to murmur among themselves. They say, surely this is the prophet who has come into this world. That actually sounds like a good day. That sounds like, all right, we got something going here. But that's kind of like getting a really juicy piece of gum before you go to bed. Chances are you're going to wake up with that thing in your hair. I mean, I won't, but you might. So this whole story it's too long for me to read. So I'm going to give you the whole story of John chapter 6, including all of this. But I'm going to give it to you in the style of Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. So this is Jesus' terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. And there's illustrations. I started teaching a crowd of people, but everyone forgot to bring lunch, so I performed a miracle to feed everyone with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. I don't really like fish, and now we have 12 baskets of leftovers. Yuck. After everyone ate, they got really excited, and they wanted to force me to be their king, so I had to run away and hide. I should have run all the way to Australia. That night, my disciples left on a boat, so I walked on water to catch up to them, and they thought I was a ghost and were scared of me. Peter tried to come out and join me, but he just sank. I told them they didn't have enough faith anyway, and they've been looking at me funny all day. When we got to the other side of the lake, the crowd of people followed us, but not because they wanted to learn more about God, but because they wanted another free meal. I told them they should just do what God wanted, which is easy because that's just believing in me. Then they started talking about Moses, and they wanted a miracle like manna from heaven, and I told them that I'm the real bread from heaven, which made them laugh because I just grew up down the street, and everybody knew my parents, so they thought I was just making stuff up. I tried explaining it, and that backfired. I said the bread from heaven is my flesh, and they got confused and yelled, how can this man give his flesh to eat? And I said, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life. And they thought that was the worst thing they'd ever heard. And honestly, it was kind of day when nothing goes right and everyone misunderstands you. And it was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. And that's what happens right as Jesus starts asking, are you going to leave me too? It says, on hearing it, many of his disciples said, this is a hard teaching. Who can accept it? And the crowd and Jesus' disciples, they begin to peel away. And you kind of are left with the impression that the only ones left standing is Jesus and his 12 disciples. Do you all know Costco? Like the store Costco? I love Costco. And one of the best things about Costco is the free samples. Now, if you don't know, Costco, in their grocery section, they have these sample stations, and there's employees, they're handing out all kinds of food for you to try. And on a good day, you can get chips and dip, you can get dumplings, you can get mini tacos or pizza, trail mix, a cookie, a little bit of juice, to wash it all down. One time I was at Sam's Club, and I got a whole chicken wing. I was like, yes, it's all free. You just got to walk through the aisle. Now, the real heyday of Costco and the free samples was before the pandemic, because once the COVID and all that, they got a little, they didn't really like all the food handling. But back in those days, there were a couple of Sundays after church where I tell Michelle, hey, let's just go to Costco for lunch and eat free samples. Like, I don't want to make anything. I don't want to spend any money. Let's just go to Costco. And we did that a couple of times. No lie, we did that. We didn't buy anything. We were just there for the free food. Now, the samples are there, obviously, to promote the products. They want you to have that, egg roll and go, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to buy the egg rolls. But we didn't do that. We were just there for free lunch. That's what happened with Jesus and the crowd. It looks like there's some momentum building in the movement of Jesus. Like maybe there's a revolution coming because there's these massive crowds of people coming to hear Jesus teach. But really, they're just there for the free samples. The people, they could have followed Jesus if he'd stayed in his lane. They could have accepted him as Messiah if he had stayed within the bounds of their agenda and their aspirations. But the thought of someone like Jesus saying the things that he said, speaking the way that he had spoken, was too much for them. They were not interested. And I don't think Jesus was delusional. I don't think that he thought, wow, this is amazing. Look at all these people. I think he knew they were just there for the free food. When I read this exchange between Jesus and the crowd, I get a sense of rising tension between Jesus and the people. And instead of trying to appease them and trying to just tell them what they want to hear, he doubles down. And his teaching becomes sharper and more difficult. And that doesn't mean that he was immune to feeling disappointed when they started to walk away. That they would reject his message and his ministry. Like the psalm that Pastor Lisa wrote, "Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me?" I think that this was a bad day for Jesus. There's two groups in this story. They're leaving Jesus. There's the crowds, and then there's his disciples. The crowds ended up being who Jesus thought they were, not really interested, just sort of following their noses. And not much has changed for crowds. Jesus always has crowds. And there's crowds now that follow Jesus. People who are just here for the free samples. And I'm not talking about our snacks and coffee out here. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean people who have found the Christian faith to be really useful. Useful in establishing their ideology or their political identity, but they don't have any real interest in following Jesus. Some people are part of the crowd. They're here out of obligation to a loved one or out of respect of a family or out of some sort of rhythm or practice that they have. Some people are here because the church has become the central piece of their social or family or even vocational lives. There are plenty of Christians who have no real interest in the truth of Jesus. But in our story, those aren't the only people walking away from Jesus. It's the disciples too. It's the people who have been with Jesus for longer, and they're making an honest try at following his teachings. And when he gets down to the sort of this hard teaching, they're the ones who say, this is difficult. Who can accept it? Last week, Pastor Lisa reminded us of other difficult teachings of Jesus, like love your enemies and pray for those who hate you. Be merciful, do not judge, and forgive. These things are universally difficult for Jesus' followers. But maybe not so difficult that we'd walk away. Yes, they're difficult, but we're not walking away. Even in today's story, Jesus says, "You must eat my flesh and drink my blood." And that sounds really weird. And like, yeah, that is weird for somebody to say that. But, we're going to take communion here in just a few minutes. And we're used to this kind of language. In part of the liturgy, it says, "Make this be for us the body and blood of Christ." We're used to hearing this. So we're not walking away from the faith because some of Jesus' teachings are hard. We walk away from the faith a lot of times for other reasons. And I've seen people leave the faith because they ran into just life was tough. Life was trouble. And they thought, how could there be a loving God and I experience this at the same time? Those two things don't line up. Some people get completely overwhelmed by addiction and abuse. There is absolutely no room for Jesus in their life. Some experience the call of the world, and it's more compelling than the call of Jesus. The call to accomplishment and ambition and wealth is just a higher calling for them. But I think the most common reason people leave the faith is drift. It's not really a reason at all. It's just sort of a slowly floating away as you experience new communities or get new friends or change jobs or increase the number of kids or hobbies or whatever. You just sort of float away. And that's not bad stuff. It's good stuff, but it's stuff. Last week we closed our service with a song called Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. It's a really old hymn. It's one of my absolute favorites, and it's a little bit of a vocab lesson. Like, you really got to be paying attention to know what it's talking about. But it has some really self-aware lyrics in it. And one of the best, it says, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. I'm inclined to believe that this is the lifelong prognosis for sin and temptation. When I hear Jesus' voice asking his closest disciples, are you going to leave me too? And then I think of my own friends and family who have drifted away from the church and from God, people that at one time in my life I would pray with, people that I would sing with, people that I would share communion with, people that I would serve with, and they left, or they just stopped showing up. And I hear Jesus asking me, are you going to leave me too? Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Alexander's mother would say it this way, some days are just like that. But I want to give you a little hope. I want to infuse a little hope for us this morning on this terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day that Jesus was having. The way I see it, we're blessed to get a glimpse of one of Jesus' bad days, and here's why. Number one, it gives us permission to say, yeah, that's tough. I'm with them. That is tough sometimes. Some people seem to have such an easy time with believing Jesus. I am not one of those people. I think it's tough. I think it's difficult. And maybe we can all just nod in agreement. It doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always even work out. And it doesn't always seem like God is watching out for us. And too often, it seems like the bad things in life get the upper hand. And so, yeah, it's tough. And this verse says, you know what? It's okay to admit that sometimes. The second thing is, these verses remind us that sometimes our mission and ministry will experience failure. We're not alone in that. At the beginning of this summer, we launched a lunch program for kids. We call it free summer lunches. And any kid could come to the church, get a free meal on Mondays. No strings attached. We put out the word to the church, and you all responded incredibly. We had more volunteers for that event we knew what to do with. And we were so excited. We put out signs. We got the lunches. We coordinated games and crafts. We went through training. We sent out flyers. We canvassed neighborhoods. We posted on social media. We let the library know. We let the grocery stores know. We told everybody, free food for kids. All you got to do is show up. And nobody showed up. Nobody. Week after week, nobody showed up. And we're flabbergasted. And I remember sitting with volunteers who came enthusiastic. We're going to hand out food. We're going to play with kids. And the kids didn't come. And I could feel just like the heat rising. Like, what is going on? Why won't they do this? The Northern Illinois Food Bank kept us going for a couple of weeks, but eventually they pulled the plug. They said, we're not giving you any more food. You're not serving anybody. It was so disappointing, and honestly, I still don't know what happened. I don't know where we went wrong. We know there's food scarcity in our community. We know that our neighborhood families need something like this. And we believe in our hearts that this is the mission of our church. This is what we're literally supposed to be doing. But it fell flat. It fell on its face. So when we have a story like this, I'm reminded that sometimes you put yourself out there and people just don't go for it. Sometimes even Jesus had days like that. So we're in good company. The third thing, maybe it gives us a hope, is that it reminds us that Jesus, he didn't give up. He didn't quit. I try to imagine what it would have been like for Jesus to spend years on the road teaching people, healing the sick, casting out demons, showing love to everyone, for those same people to just turn their backs on him. It must have been supremely disappointing. But he never gave up. He took that rejection all the way to the cross. The saving grace of Jesus was not deemed worthy by how many supporters he had, how much money he raised, how big the crowds were, how many politicians he influenced, but because he carried out the will of the Father to the bitter end. He loved and longed to save the very people who would put him on the cross. And he never gave up on them, not once. He never gave up on them. He never gives up on us. He never gives up on you. And the Gospels characterize the 12 disciples as really bold, but sort of bumbling a little bit. You know, they make a lot of mistakes. They often misunderstand his teachings and say the wrong thing. But in this instance, on the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, they got it right. When Jesus asked the 12, "Don't you also want to leave?" their answer is this: "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God." So let's take heart in their belief. May that be our belief, and may the truth of that belief carry us through the difficulties of this life, the pain of loss and regret, and even through the struggle to follow Jesus wholeheartedly. And may the steadfast love of God, the grace of Christ, and the power of the Spirit guide and sustain you today and always. Amen. Amen.